Yeah, now we are motivated to our most brilliant ideas.
Yes, because nobody will ever see it unless we decide.
Such as defining psychogeography. The unconscious influence of landscape and topography upon national characteristics, and how, as these characteristics change, for instance by the rising of sea levels, so there are impacts subconsciously upon the population. This sounds almost like a kind of Lovecraftian idea, especially when you invoke the rising of the sea levels and what might be within the sea. But no, I do not mean that.
Well, psychogeography could also be a clue to discover cosmology.
Mm-hmm. Well, the vision of constellations, for example, is completely conditioned by patterns in the sky which do not correspond to reality in the slightest. So the two stars which are close together in a constellation, one of them might be very, very distant and bright, and another might be very, very close and dim. And there can be a much wider separation between two stars we see in the sky than is apparent. The two stars in the sky might be this far apart, and two other stars which are this far apart might in actuality be quite close together. So our vision of the sky is a completely false one, upon which we imprint patterns, mythologies, and this is a psychogeography of the sky, psychocosmology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but could there be also a psychocosmology regarding what our instruments tell us, which exists very far away, but after all, these are not really our senses.
It is our instruments.
It's our instruments
Yes.
that tell us that 50 billions of years away there is something.
These things have become apparent as instrumentation becomes more and more sensitive. Of course, there is a limit because the universe is expanding, or at least our universe is expanding.
Or perhaps our perception of the universe is that it's expanding.
Yes, but you come to the limit that the most distant objects exceed the speed of light.
This because of the redshift. But what if all our interpretation were wrong?
If our interpretation of the redshift is wrong, well,
This could change.
there is nevertheless expansion happening.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, this is accelerating expansion because, again, the redshifts, the most distant redshifts, are greater than would have been accounted for by steady expansion.
But could it not be all a consequence of psychocosmology?
This is
somehow.
Yes, it could be our interpretations of distance, for example. Now, how do we interpret distances? We try to, there are stars called Cepheid variables, which are supposed to wax and wane in brightness in an absolutely fixed way. So that if you see one of these waxing and waning at a certain distance, we assume that we know what the distance is based upon others which are closer. And likewise, pulsars, which go tick-tock, tick-tock, thousands of times a second, we believe, and which are slowing, where we believe that we know how far away pulsars are. But all our calibration of distances in the universe is based upon taking objects within a relatively short distance, trying to find fixed values there, and then searching for objects which correspond to these nearer objects according to the laws of physics. And therefore, extrapolating distance based upon indicators here, which must correspond to indicators there, and then on and on.
Ian, if I'm right, you are somehow an advocate of the possibility of the theory of that we live in a computer simulation being right. I mean, there are some theses about the fact that we all live in a computer simulation, aren't they?
Oh yes, there are indeed. It seems that there will relatively soon be ways of testing this by being able to examine the fine, very small structure of reality at smaller and smaller levels. And the question is whether the universe is pixelated or not pixelated. If it is pixelated, then that allows the possibility of us being in a computer simulation.
In this case, if we are in a computer simulation, couldn't it be that nothing really exists beyond our imaginary world? I mean, if our world is imaginary, then wouldn't all the rest of the universe be completely useless? I mean, it could be a simple mathematical construction which creates this kind of data which we get with our instruments in order for us to believe it exists, perhaps to study our reaction to it. In reality, you could have the nothingness.
But there's nothing unreal about a simulation, especially...
Yeah, but in this case we would have a blend of a simulation which is real as far as it's only strictly necessary. It means that the things would become real only because we need them.
The waves, the individual waves of the Atlantic Ocean only become real if you examine them.
Yes, whenever you touch them, whenever you examine them. When you see them, they are unreal. So all the rest of the universe, which we all perceive just only like tiny signals inside our instruments, they could also be eventually nothing more than that until we really would go there and verify them.
Yeah, there is a theory that the boundary of the universe is holographic in nature, and the form of the hologram which it creates is our physical universe. I don't know whether this is reasonable or unreasonable. However, why would the universe be a simulation?
That's another entirely different, very important issue.
Yeah, now it is either simulated by something, someone, or it arises naturally, as in the theory that the boundary conditions of the universe are holographic in nature.
Yes, it's possible that the simulation is the real state of existence in itself.
Yes, yes.
The thing itself.
The thing itself, yeah, exactly. And that it is not one of many simulations being produced at extreme speed by enormous supercomputers using the complete resources of a neutron star or something, but it exists because it must exist, because that is the nature of reality.
This is more plausible also because computer is an anthropomorphism anyway,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it wouldn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we cannot assume that any of our models are correct.
But we can assume that they're all wrong.
Well...
They can be functional, but they cannot be real.
They can be functional. Well, mathematics, for example. Is this a human construction, or is it something inherent in the nature of reality? Are there alternative mathematics? Have we simply created, with great genius, a system of explanation which does not actually correspond to the thing in itself?
Yeah, that's the big question. I am rather skeptic to believe that whatever could be the thing in itself, even mathematics.
Yeah.
Even though mathematics works, still I'm reluctant to accept that it could be the thing in itself.
The easiest assumption, in fact, and according to Occam's razor, you should always go for the simplest assumption, is that things are as they are because they must be that and cannot be any other way.
Of course.
And also that it is much easier for something to exist than for nothing to exist.
Yes, that's something to think a little more about that, yes. Well, for sure it is more easy for what exists to exist than not to exist.
Yes. To imagine absolute non-existence is perhaps nonsense. Because you are talking there about the existence of non-existence.
Yes.
Which makes no sense. So the easiest, well, in Occam's terms, explanation of the universe is that it has always been as part of an evolving series of universes or on its own, and that there is nothing else, that there is no nothing, no pure nothing, and that it sustains itself and always has sustained itself. We are too binary in our thinking, either or, yes, no.
Yeah, exactly. This is another anthropomorphism.
Being or nothingness.
Yes, I think this is the first mistake.
And we are very binary. We have 2 hands, 2 arms, 2 legs.
2 pieces of the brain.
Yeah. So what are the perceptions of creatures which are non-binary? Intelligent creatures which are non-binary?
Yeah, well, this is a problem of the dualistic, the so-called dualistic nature of the universe. Why dualistic?
Yeah. Another thing which I'm not happy about regarding the universe is the concept that there ought to have been equal amounts of matter and antimatter created during the initial Big Bang, but that for some reason there was a tiny surplus of actual matter, so that when the annihilation of matter and antimatter happened, just resulting in energy release, then what is left over, 1% of what was created, becomes the total universe that we see.
It sounds fantasy to me.
Well, yeah. And then out of that complete universe of matter that we see, this does not explain the universe well enough, so we have to create imaginary matter, dark matter, with imaginary characteristics, dark energy, to explain physical phenomena such as the fact that the galaxies do not throw themselves apart while rotating rapidly.
The more I live, the more all this sounds to complete nonsense to me. And this is quite important, I think, because if science wouldn't sound nonsense to the people in time, we still would have the science of 10,000 years ago. It's always, when you have a scientific consensus on something, it's always the people who find it nonsense who actually made the next step.
The next step.
So
yeah.
I'm not making the next step because I don't know, I didn't get to any real idea. But I am to the middle step to understand that this is nonsense. It doesn't matter.
History of thought suggests that you do not arrive at a conclusion, a solution, a total explanation.
First of all, this is first of all. So you are pretty safe to say something in nonsense even if you don't understand why. But in this case, I feel that this is nonsense. So it's not just only a gamble. It's like I feel it's nonsense. I have no whatsoever alternative theory, of course. Other way I would be Stephen Hawkins.
Yes.
And the current belief stinks.
Which is good. Well, this allows for absurdist surreal science fiction. You can either be a mathematics-speaking scientist, creating theories about how the fundamentals of matter are vibrating strings, which are in dimensions too small for you to ever detect, or you can be metaphorical and possibly reflect a reality which is beyond the present realities that we have arrived at. It will only be a provisional and incomplete reality, but since I do not speak mathematics, I prefer the course of metaphor rather than mathematical materialism.
Absolutely agree with that, and especially as our all human nature is completely structured, has the architecture of metaphors. So basically, our being human relies only on this architecture of metaphors, which is far more important in my view than the mathematical instrument that we have invented, which is a secondary invention. Human being has first created metaphors, which has created their own mind, their own consciousness, which wouldn't exist without the metaphors, and afterwards mathematics came as a sub-product. So I completely agree, and actually I think that after what you just said, I just even more think that the solution, I mean the first intuition of how a next step of understanding of the nature of reality and the universe will be of a metaphorical kind instead of a mathematical one.
At the same time, I regret casting doubts upon science in general, because then this leads to stupid mysticism.
This is the problem. This is the problem exactly of, again, the dualism, again the stupid dualism. The fact that you realize how inefficient science is leads people to dismiss it entirely for more efficient ways to think.
Yeah, well, science is extremely effective. Applied science, technology, it works. Quantum theory works. We would not have a lot of the technology that we use every day.
It still is the best available tool. It's like how Churchill was speaking about democracy, which is democracy is horrible, but all the other options are worse. With science, I would say statement. Science is horrible.
Yes.
But the alternatives are worse.
Yeah. The important thing, I think, is that people who are going to criticize science should understand a bit about science.
Yes, this is kind of prerequirement.
Yeah, they should understand, for example, what is entropy, what is a star, what is a galaxy. And there are far too many people who just want to live in a world of fairies and who...
and they can't expect... just expecting for someone to tell them that science is shit, to say, yeah.
Now I can believe in fairies and vegan, tantric lifestyle or whatever, which is complete bollocks. This is intellectual laziness. Well, it is worse than that. It's a betrayal of having an intellect.
Yeah, it's the science become a gadget to attach to what you, there are a lot of very trivial how you say exploitation of concepts like quantic. It's true, as Niels Bohr, who invented quantum theory, said that whoever pretends to understand it didn't understand it.
Yeah,
It's quite ununderstandable. It works, but it's impossible to understand. However, a lot of people take this impossibility to understand like a pretext to just place it everywhere. And you will have quantum cuisine, quantum. It's all bollocks. It's just taking a complex label which is still lacking explanation into other fields in order just to gain fanciness. And this is a problem because you just pollute words with meanings which don't belong to them, and it makes speaking seriously, I mean marginally seriously, I mean speak about the real thing more and more difficult. Because you say quantum and the other one understands magic.
Yeah, they do. I mean, I would basically, in general, just defend science.
Yeah, well, I would defend science in front of these people, I would attack science whenever I'm among scientists. I think this would be a wise approach.
Query science, query.
Well, a real science wouldn't mind if I accept science. It would be nice
the scientific principle is to try to disprove a hypothesis, disprove a theory.
Yes, but usually when you disprove a theory, you find incredible blindness in the orthodox scientific communities.
It takes
a long time. I don't know if it was Maxwell or Planck. I think Maxwell who said that he never convinced anyone in his life. Simply the people who didn't understand, he thinks he died and the other just believed it.
Yeah, well, Wegener, with his theory of continental drift, was completely right and completely laughed at